Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Judge Tamika West Bernard. I'm presiding over preliminary hearing calendar for this morning. We briefly took a recess to allow the parties to confer. We are officially back on the record. We are streaming live via YouTube. The defendants are present via Clayton County Jail via Zoom, and their counsel is present for the hearing via Zoom. At this time, I'm going to officially call the state of Georgia versus Amado Andredes for warrant number 2023 CW 52051 for the charge of murder. We have a second charge of warrant number 2023 CW 10012 for the charge of possession of a firearm during a crime. Third charge, we have warrant number 2023 CW 10013 for the charge of firearms possession by a first offender. Fourth is warrant number 2023 CW 10015, possession of marijuana less than over an ounce. Warrant number 2023 CW 10016, or violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act. Manufacturer, sale, distribution, and deliver. Warrant number 2023 CW 10017, a second count for violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act of Schedule 1 controlled substance. Warrant number 2023 CW 10018 for another count of violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act Schedule 1 controlled substance. That will conclude the charges against defendant Mr. Andreas. In addition, we also have a co-defendant. So I'm officially calling the state of Georgia versus Michael D. McGruger, also for the charge of murder, specifically warrant number 2023 CW 52002. Second charge for Mr. McGruger, warrant number 2023 CW 52003 for the charge of possession of a firearm and or weapon during a crime. Warrant number 2023 CW 10003, firearm possession by a first offender. That will conclude the charges pending against Mr. McGruger. The state will be represented by ADA Cheryl Freeman. The defendant, first defendant, Mr. Andreas, will be represented by attorney Nicole Jones. And the defendant, Mr. McGruger, will be represented by attorney Jonathan Oden. As I indicated, they are appearing live via YouTube, via Zoom. ADA Freeman, are you ready to call your first witness in the case?
Yes, Your Honor. The state calls Detective Tracy Moore. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony about provide in the cases of state of Georgia versus Amado Andredes and state of Georgia versus Michael McGruder will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Thank you. Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
I'm Detective Tracy Moore. I'm employed with the Clayton County Police Department. I've been with the agency for 9 years. I've been in CID for 6 years. I am currently in the Criminal Investigation Division in Major Felony.
Detective Moore, were you working with the Clayton County Police Department on April 21st of 2023?
I was, yes, ma'am.
On that particular day, did a call come in to dispatch regarding a man in a hotel that no one, I guess, he wouldn't answer the door at America's Best Inn and Suites?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Is that at 6358 Old Dixie Road?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And did officers respond to that location to check out that call?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
What did officers learn when they arrived there?
They learned the room was rented the day prior and the person never checked out and never, got another day or anything. So the management initially went up and could not make contact. So the officers attempted to make contact, and as soon as they began to open the door, there was a body against the door. So they could not fully open the door because there was a deceased male laying against the door.
Was that deceased male Joseph Rogers?
Yes, ma'am.
What information were you able to gather as to how Mr. Rogers passed away?
We weren't 100% certain at first. He did have, there was a defect on his left shoulder, upper arm, that we were not sure if that was a bullet wound or not, but he also had a foam coming from his mouth and nostrils that we were not sure if he was a victim of foul play or an overdose at that time. On the Monday following, on 4/24, I received a call from the GBI medical examiner. They had performed the autopsy, and they advised that it was indeed a bullet, and it had penetrated through his left shoulder and then went through his aorta and his heart, and he had bled out internally.
Is that from the mark that you all saw on his shoulder?
Yes, ma'am.
After getting that information from the GBI, please tell us how you were able to determine what happened to Mr. Rogers.
Okay, so the first thing we did was obtain video surveillance footage from the incident location. In viewing the video footage, there was many people that came in and out of that room. It was rented on the 20th, and there was a lot of traffic coming in and out of the room. On the 20th at approximately, I believe it was about 7 o'clock at night. I would have to refer to my PC to give an exact time, but it's probably 7 p.m. I would say roughly. There was, so the person who we know is deceased, Mr. Rogers, and the defendant here, Michael Magruder, entered the room, and they came back out of the room when a gray Toyota Avalon older model pulled up down the stairs from the room. They went and met those two persons who were later identified as Eric Carrillo and Amado Andrades, who are brothers. All four went back up to the room, went inside the room. They were not in there very long when there was a female at a room adjacent. She clearly reacted to something in the room, ducked, which we believe is the gunshot. She ducked and she ducked back into her room. Almost immediately following that, Mr. Andrades and his brother and Michael Magruder left the room in a big hurry. Magruder went to the stairwell on the far end of the property, which would be, I guess, the south end of the property. Mr. Andrades and Mr. Carrillo went down the center stairwell. They got into their car, and as they're backing out, you can clearly see on video that Mr. Magruder waves at them and flags them down. He runs and he jumps in the car, and they all leave the property in the vehicle. And then,
I'm sorry, Detective, did the video have any sound?
no, ma'am.
Okay.
Just video, you could view it, that's all.
Okay, you can continue.
Okay, and then in the video, you can clearly see Magruder leaves with a backpack that he did carry in initially. Then Mr. Andrades and his brother, Eric Carrillo, as they're running down the stairs in the middle, they have his brother has a firearm, clearly a firearm in his hand. We were able to ID them through tattoos and through social media. Mr. Magruder was identified through, I sent his very clear image of his face. I sent it to the Department of Driver Services, who sent back the persons that matched the facial recognition, and it was clearly Mr. Magruder. So when they left all in this green Toyota, who belonged, the vehicle, we could see the tag as well, but we did find the vehicle on Flock a short way up Holiday. And then when you get to the end of Holiday, it turns into Morrow Road. There's a Flock camera up there. So we were able to get that from there as well. That vehicle returned to Andrades's wife. So we were able to ID them through, so they're in the vehicle that is associated with him, and we saw the tattoos that were associated with him. So we're relatively sure of what happened. There are two other individuals that are outstanding that were in the room that did not flee with them. They left later. They did not flee with them at that time. So we believe that those two individuals are witnesses in the case, but we've not been able to speak to either one of those folks yet.
The female that you mentioned, Detective, have you been able to speak to her?
Mrs. Andrades?
Yeah, was that
his wife? Yes, that's his wife. Yeah, I did speak to her. She wasn't super cooperative, but she did indicate that it was, that was their vehicle, and that Mr. Andrades is the one that drives that vehicle.
Was she able to give any information about the gunshot in the hotel room?
No, ma'am. Are you talking about the person that was next door or his wife?
Yes.
Oh,
No.
I'm sorry. The young lady that was next door, she was not cooperative either. She denied hearing the gunshot. I was looking at her face. It was clearly her, and she didn't even want to tell me who she was. So
Okay. And so just so we're clear, because we're recording, the female who was in the hotel next to that room, that was not Mr. Andredes' wife.
correct. That's correct.
And that particular individual, she did not want to give her information.
Correct.
Okay. Were you able to locate any other witnesses who may have seen or heard anything that happened in that hotel room?
Not at this time, no, ma'am.
Have you been able to locate any firearms that were possibly used?
No, we did find a magazine in Mr. Andrades's vehicle. We did not locate the firearm, and we have not located another firearm.
Were you able to locate Mr. Andrades shortly after this happened?
Yes, ma'am. When I did get warrants, the sheriff's office did pick him up for me. At that time, we did do a search warrant on his residence where the narcotics was located. That's part of this, but he was interviewed, and first he denied knowing anything about the gunshot, and then he said that he and his brother went. When I told him, I don't remember if I showed him the pictures of himself there or not. I believe I did, but I at least told him he was on video there, and he said, yeah, he knew that we would see him there. He denied being in there when the gunshot happened, and he said that they had gone there to buy marijuana, which did not make sense to me because he had a whole lot of marijuana in his residence, so that didn't make a lot of sense to me.
If you could, Detective, can you tell us about the narcotics that were located regarding Mr. Andredes?
Yes, ma'am. May I refer to my PC for the weights?
I don't have an objection to that. Attorney Jones, Attorney Oden?
No objection for me for the weights of the drugs.
None for me.
Thank you.
So at their residence, I don't know if you want me to say the street address, but it was on Pinedale Road and Pinedale Drive in Forest Park where he lives, and that number that they live there. That was confirmed. In the vehicle is a 97 Toyota Avalon that Mr. Andrades drives, and that was what they drove to that location that evening. We did locate 4.2 grams of cocaine, 6.5 grams of meth, 26.4 grams of marijuana, 18.4 grams of marijuana in a different package, then 21.3 grams of marijuana as well. So there's 3 different bags in there. And then we located 86 triangular pills that were suspected MDMA, which was within the car within a gray bag. And then the car had Mr. Andrades's driver's license in as well. His wife advised it was his car. The keys to that vehicle was located in their bedroom, in the master bedroom that they shared. And in the closet of that bedroom, I found a bag of marijuana that weighed at 6.59 ounces in a container in the bottom of their closet. All of those narcotics were located during the search warrant. CSI did collect those items, and they did do the presumptive test, and they did test positive for the narcotics. They have been sent to the GBI for confirmation of that, however.
The marijuana that was located, Detective, how were you able to determine that was marijuana?
Through my training, knowledge, and experience, I've seen many cases where we're doing both on the road. I dealt with that a lot, and then a lot in CID. We do a lot of search warrants, and a lot of times we find marijuana during our search warrants. That's even if that's not what we're looking for, but we find that quite a bit. So I've had a lot of cases that have involved that.
How were the drugs packaged?
The, they were packaged in clear plastic packages. There was a scale and baggies, so it was not broke. It's clearly for distribution. However, they were not broke down to distribute, if that makes sense. They were, still like you would, I guess he weighs it and packages it as needed.
And Detective, based on your training and experience, when you said that you all found scale, you saw clear baggies, what are those indicative of regarding narcotics?
The sale, the distribution of narcotics.
Did you look at any firearms at Mr. Andreas' residence?
No, just within his vehicle, there was the magazine for a firearm, but we did not locate the firearm or a firearm.
Were you able to run a criminal history check on Mr. Andreas?
I did.
And at that time, did he have any previous convictions or was on first offender?
Yes, ma'am. He's had several convictions. Most recently, it was through Clayton County Superior Court in for aggravated assault and among other things. And he was on felony probation currently. And I part of the way that I found him was through his probation officer.
Regarding Mr. Magruder, were you able to arrest him around the same time you arrested Mr. Andreas?
Yes, ma'am. The Clayton County Sheriff's Office fugitive unit did locate him for me as well. When he was located, he did have a firearm in his possession. We don't believe that, I believe it was not going to be the same. It's not going to be the murder weapon because of the caliber and what the GBI medical examiner described to be a small gray unjacketed. My experience would be that would probably more than likely be a 22 and it could be a 32, but it was certainly, we never found a shell casing. So I would believe that was probably shot from a revolver. So that would be consistent with a 22 as well.
Did you run a criminal history check regarding Mr. Magruder?
I did.
What did you find regarding Mr. Magruder?
May I refer to my PC for that, ma'am?
Yes, I don't have an objection for that.
I know he was a convicted felon and he was currently on probation as well. He was convicted of robbery on 2/23/17 by the Clayton County Superior Court.
Okay. And you talked about the brother of Mr. Andreas, Mr. Carrillo.
Yes,
At the time, he was not arrested with Mr. Andreas. Is that correct?
he had warrants, he had active warrants, but he ran. He was not at the location. He was supposed to be, according to his probation officer, living at that same residence with his brother. He was not there. We did find the clothing that he was wearing in the video at that location. And I found a bag that I could see on his social media and stuff, but we didn't find him. He has subsequently been arrested and he has a prelim next week.
Right. Did all of this happen in Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Mr. Magruder make any statements when he was arrested about what happened?
He did. He first advised that he wasn't there for any gunshots. And then he changed the story that he was downstairs when he heard a gunshot. And first he denied getting in the car with Mr. Carrillo and Mr. Andrades. But then I told him there was a video and everything. And he admitted that he was in the room. He admitted that they went down to the car and got in the car and that they were supposed to drop him off. I believe he said on Mount Zion Boulevard where his girlfriend lives somewhere. And he stated that as soon as he got in the car that Andrades was fussing at, for lack of a better term, Carrillo, saying And he said that it was a gun sale is what it was supposed to be. He said that Andrade stated that to Carrillo, why didn't you check the head of the gun? In other words, why didn't you check to see if the gun was loaded? Because I guess he was trying to say that it was an accident. He was testing it out and the gun went off, is what he's saying happened.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Attorney Jones, your witness.
All right, Detective Moore, I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. With Mr. Andreas, you did not see a gun in his hand, correct?
I did not. It was in his brother's hand who was running beside him. Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And with Mr. Andreas, when you searched his house, you did not see a firearm at all, correct?
No, ma'am, just the magazine
That was in a vehicle, correct?
in his vehicle. Yes, ma'am.
And there was multiple people in the vehicle, correct?
Are you saying that people travel in it regularly, or are you talking about on the video?
On the video, you only know about what's on the video. There was multiple
On the
people in
video, correct. Yes, I saw Mr. Andrade in the driver's seat. I saw Mr. Carrillo get into the passenger seat, and Mr. Magruder got into the driver's side back seat.
And previously you testified that the hotel room had a lot of foot traffic coming in and out, correct?
It did.
And you also testified that two other individuals that did not leave with Mr. Andreas and Mr. Magruder were still in the hotel room later, after they left, correct?
Correct.
And you also testified that they left the room later, correct?
They did.
And you previously testified that the one female you saw in the video said she did not hear a gunshot, correct?
She stated that she didn't hear or see anything, but on the video, that's clear. She didn't want to give her name, so she was very uncooperative. However, in the video, you could clearly see her react to and duck. So that would be my presumption that that's when the gunshot happened.
Okay, so it's just a presumption. You have no clue when a gunshot actually happened, correct?
I'm pretty certain that that's when it happened, but and looking at the video, if you see the video and the video cameras are all over that establishment, and you see what happens, and then immediately after that, you see three people run from the room. One of them running down the stairs has a gun, and I mean they're moving. They're not just walking casually back to the car. They are getting out of there. So I'm pretty sure that's when the gun happened.
In the video, you can't hear anything, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's just leave it by what's on the video, not what your assumption is, please. In the video, you can't see if there's a fight breaking out, correct?
No, they're within the hotel room or motel room, and the door
And
is
in the video,
closed.
you cannot see a gunshot, correct?
No,
And in the video, you cannot hear anything, correct?
correct.
So if the witness said she did not hear a gunshot, all you can go by is what she said, she did not hear a gunshot, correct?
Well, she stated that she didn't hear. She specifically stated that she hears gunshots all the time, and she cannot say that she heard a gunshot at that time. Correct.
She didn't hear one at that time, but she does know what gunshot sounds like, correct?
She stated that people shoot guns around there all the time.
Okay. And you also stated earlier that you believe it is a 22 and or a 32 shot
Yes,
from a
ma'am.
revolver, correct?
Yes, ma'am. That's what I believe, but I'm
And
not certain.
The only gun that you found was with Mr. Magruder, and it was not a 22 or a 32, correct?
Correct.
And the clip, because you said it's a magazine, obviously is not from the revolver, a 22 or a 32 that was in Andrea's car, correct?
Correct.
So to this date, you have no bullets or anything that would match the bullet that was actually found in the victim associated with Mr. Andreas, correct?
No, I don't have a firearm that would match that. What that bullet would be. Correct.
And you don't have any bullets either, correct?
I don't believe we found any. No, ma'am.
Okay. And again, you did the search of the home because you saw them leaving, but the two individuals that were actually in the hotel room, because strike that, let's go back. You stated you could not get into the room because the body was blocking the door, correct?
Correct.
So that means the person went to the door after these people left the hotel room, correct?
Yeah, they left shortly after, and then somebody did come back and try to go in the room, but they couldn't get in the door either. So he would have, I'm not sure how he got against the door. And I'm not sure how fast you would bleed out. And like if you were trying to go get help, I'm not sure how fast that would be, or if he was trying to get the door. I couldn't answer that for you, ma'am.
And you also don't know if the other people inside the hotel room locked the door to prevent the other person from coming in shortly later. You.
The door was not locked. I mean, well, the door's
the
not
time you-
dead-bolted.
At the time you went later on, it was not dead bolted, but you do not know if the other people that were left in the hotel room dead bolted that door, correct?
They couldn't have, or we wouldn't have been able to get back in. I don't understand what you're asking.
After my client left, you said there was other two people that remained for a little while in the room, correct?
Yes.
So in between the time that my client is leaving, it is possible that they could have dead bolted that door, correct?
I suppose. Yes, ma'am.
It is also possible that the two people that were in the room could have shot the victim, correct?
I mean, anything's possible, ma'am. However, they left right after. When I say they didn't stay for an extended time, they left as well, but not exactly at the same time. So
It
there's
doesn't
not.
take
It's
long
not
to
like
shoot
minutes.
someone. It doesn't take long to shoot someone, correct?
That's correct. But again, we have the
And they
witness.
could have, and for you're doing assumptions, they could have got mad that they didn't get drugs that day, correct?
Yeah, but this one,
that's
there's been a lot of Attorney Jones asking a lot, Detective Moore to speculate in it. So I'm going to make the objection.
You're on mute, Your Honor.
Okay, your response, Attorney Jones?
My response was she was going through speculation on her testimony beforehand, so I was just going with a different speculation on her probable cause hearing.
I agree, but this is a prelim hearing, so I'm going to sustain the objection.
Thank you, Judge.
And the marijuana you found at my client's house was after a search warrant on supposedly this murder charge, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Looking for evidence that tied them to the scene of the murder. That's correct.
And just to make sure there is nothing found at my client's house that can tie them to the scene of the murder, correct?
The brother's clothing that he was wearing in the surveillance video was located there. Mr. Andrades had on very generic clothing, so no, I did not find. There was nothing to. It was a white tank top, so there's nothing special about that would make me collect a white tank top. I collected the other gentleman's clothing because it was very unique, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
On any of their clothing, you didn't see any blood splatter or anything like that, correct?
No, ma'am.
And we've already gone through this. You didn't see a gun that matched anything for the issue, correct?
Correct.
And the marijuana that you said there was enough, you gave us grams of marijuana, correct? The amount
Initially,
of pound.
the marijuana in the car was in grams. The marijuana that I spoke about coming from his closet was in ounces.
Okay. And there was multiple people that lived in that house, correct?
Yes, Mr. Andrades, from what I know, Mr. Andrades, his wife, Mr. Andrades's other brother, Vieira Carrillo, his girlfriend, and the Andrades children, which I believe it was three girls, I believe.
So there's 7 different people in that home, and everything we found was within grams and ounces of marijuana, correct?
Correct.
And there was a little bit of what you suspect as some MDMA pills. I think that's what you stated the other day.
I believe it was, we found those pills, the same pills also in the brother's room. But so I charged the brother with the ones that I located in his bedroom. But the other ones, the ones I'm speaking of, came out of your client's car. that he drives.
That the brother was in the car, correct?
Different brother.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Okay, Attorney Oden, your witness.
Thank you, Anna. And if I'm not mistaken, is it Detective Moore?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, help me, if you will, with this timeline.
Mm-hmm.
As I understand, there's the surveillance video is continuously running. Is that correct?
I don't know if it's continuously or motion. I believe it's just motion activated, but yes, it did pick up yes.
And once it's activated, does it timestamp the times that once it starts running?
Yes, sir. It is timestamped. Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you will, give me the date and time that the video shows the innkeeper going to the door, or whoever it was going to the door in an attempt to get in.
I don't have that time written down, sir, but I can give you the time when I do have it written down within a summary within my case file. I don't have it right here. I could try to go back and refer to that if you would like, but I can give you the time that your Mr. Magruder, Mr. Andradas, and Mr. Carrillo ran out of the room.
Okay. If you will, give me the amount of time lapsed between the time that the last two people left the room and the time that the innkeeper went to the room to get in. What was the approximate amount of time?
For exacts, I'd have to refer to my case file, but I believe it was around 7 p.m. when they ran from the room, and the call for 911 came in, I believe, at 11:49. So it would have been 7 p.m. on the 20th till approximately 11 in the morning on the 21st.
Okay.
So we're talking about what, 12, 13, 14, 15, about 14, 15 hours, something like that.
Okay, I think you misunderstood. Maybe I misunderstood you. The last two people who left,
Yes, sir.
were they running?
No, sir.
Okay, so, and my question was, what was the approximate amount of time that elapsed between the time that the last two men who left the room and the time that the innkeeper went to the room?
I'd have to refer to my case file for exact, but I would say maybe a minute, 2 minutes, a very short time. It's not a long time.
So the last two men who left the room stayed in the room overnight?
No, sir. I'm not following what your question is. I'm sorry. Can you repeat your question, sir?
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your testimony is that the last people that you saw to leave the room were two gentlemen who were not running.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm asking you, what was the amount of time that lapsed between the last two gentlemen that left the room, and I presume they were walking, and the time that the innkeeper went to the room to check on the occupant?
I would have to refer to my case file for that, sir.
Okay, you're unable to give an approximate time?
Approximate, I would say it would be about the same thing. So the 911 call came in at 11:45, I believe, 11:45, something around there. So it would have been just prior to that, when the innkeeper tried to make entry initially, or tried to make contact initially. And what I'm saying is the gunshot incident happened approximately 7 p.m. the night prior on 4/20. So the body was found on 4/21 around 11:45ish. The time when the video shows the people leaving the room was around 7 p.m. on the 20th. So what I'm saying is those other people who did remain in the room, they left right away too. They didn't leave with those, because the three individuals ran from the room, like they were getting out of there. The other two did leave the room, and it wasn't shortly thereafter. So it would have been from 7 p.m. around 7 p.m. on the 20th till he was located, found deceased on 4/21 around 11:45 in the morning.
Okay, so based on your answer, are you basically testifying that you can't give an amount of time or an estimate of the amount of time between the time that you saw Mr. Magruder leave the room and the time that you saw the two people who left the room after him?
That was approximately a minute or so after. It was not a long, that's what I'm saying. It was approximately a minute or so. It was not a long distance of time, unless you're talking about the person that came back and attempted to go in the room, couldn't get in the room, and they turned around and walked away. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, but they didn't ever make entry into the room.
No, I'm asking about the last two people that left the room.
Approximately a minute or so behind Mr. Magruder, Mr. Andradas, and Mr. Carrillo.
Okay, now did you make an effort to determine when those last two people who left the room, did you make an effort to determine when they entered the room?
Yes, sir. It's all on video. I have a long summary about the timestamps and everything on the video, but I would have to refer to that to give you that information. I believe they were in the room. I believe the first so initially the deceased is in the room. Those other two people were in the room apparently, and then Mr. Magruder comes, he goes into the room. And then when the two other individuals show up, Mr. Magruder and Mr. Rogers, who is the decedent, leave the room, go downstairs and meet those two individuals, walk them back up to the room, and then they go into the room.
Okay, so approximately how long were those two people who left the room, how long were they in the room before Mr. Magruder arrived?
Yes.
That was a question. How
Yes.
long were the two people that were in the room, when the last two that left, how long were they in the room before Mr. Magruder arrived?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so I would have to refer back to my case file for that. They were for a while. I'm not that long, but a while. I would have to refer back to my case file to give you an exact time, sir.
Okay, now were you ever able to identify those people?
One of them I did, and that person is not willing to come in for an interview. The other person, I'm still working to ID that person.
Okay, so you're treating them as witnesses, is that correct?
I mean, I'm treating them as they're possible suspects. I need to speak to them, yes, but the evidence that I have right now would point to certainly the three individuals that I have arrested at this point. I'm not saying those other people are not culpable in this or may not be, but I do need to speak to them. But I don't know what you want to, I don't have enough to say that they're suspects yet, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, so did you speak to Mr. Magruder before you got a warrant for him?
No.
Okay, but you need to speak to these two before you get a warrant for them.
Well, if you'd like me to explain that, I can.
Well, yeah, please. I'm interested to hear that.
Okay, so the three individuals that ran from the room, and I'm not talking about they just got out there quick. I'm talking about they ran from the room. They ran down the stairs. Mr. Carrillo, Mr. Andradas ran down the stairs so fast. I believe it was Mr. Carrillo that grabbed the rail because he tried to jump down the last stairs and he about tripped and fell. He clearly had a firearm in his hand. They were clearly in a hurry to get out of there. And, you know, nobody called a court and with the other two folks too. That's why I need to talk to them too. Nobody called and said, hey, this was an accidental gunshot. Hey, this man needs medical attention. Who knows? I don't know if that could have saved him or not, but nobody did take those steps as far as I can tell. But we have Mr. Magruder goes into the room. He's in there for a few minutes with Mr. Rogers. They come out and they meet these two people who they say they're there to buy weed, which they have plenty of weed at their house, so that doesn't make sense. Magruder says they came to buy a gun. That makes more sense, but I don't know. We just have conflicting stories right now. But at the end of the day, those are the people that fled. Mr. Magruder wanted to get out of there so bad that he got in the car with those other two individuals. And his own statement said that the Carrillo was the one that shot when he was buying a gun, and that the brother was mad at him for shooting and not checking the gun. So there's plenty of evidence that between the video and between statements made, but nobody's consistent, I guess. But I do need to speak to the other two people. I don't see them flee the same way. I don't see a firearm in their hand the same way. And there we are.
Okay, so you have basically assumed that because Carrillo ran with a gun in his hand, that Magruder is somehow another link to him.
Well, they were clearly, it would appear that Mr. Magruder set up this deal with these two individuals because he goes down to meet them and brings them back up with Rogers. So they're coming to this room, whether it's to buy a gun or whether it's to buy weed, I don't know, but they're coming to this room to make some kind of deal. So he has brought those people there. He is clearly familiar with those people and Rogers to be doing whatever illegal activity kind of deal they've got going on. I'm not sure whether, again, like I said, whether it's to buy marijuana or to buy a gun, but he is clearly part of this, what's going on, because he arrives and then a short time later he goes downstairs with Rogers to meet these people and bring them back up. So he's part of this.
Okay, and Rogers is the person who's deceased, is he not?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so you're assuming that because Magruder went downstairs with Rogers, that Magruder is the one that made the arrangements with the two individuals in the car, are you not?
I'm not assuming anything, sir. I'm still investigating the case and I will find the answers to that. However, he went down to the car to meet him, whether whoever made the phone call or who made the, or whatever the communication is, whoever did that, he still, whether it was Magruder or whether it was Rogers, he was still, they were together to go bring these people up to do whatever it is that they were going to do in the room.
Okay, now in Magruder's statement to you regarding the shooting, did he say he was actually in the room with them?
He changed his story a whole lot of times, but however, he did end up saying that he did not see the shooting. He was in the room when the shooting happened. And he stated that when he got into the car with those two individuals, that Andrades was fussing at his brother Carrillo for not checking the gun before. He was trying to say that it was an accident at that point. So we went from I wasn't there to I was there, but I left before the gunshot to, yeah, I was in there when the gunshot happened, but I didn't see it, to I go get in the car with two people who just shot somebody and leave and flee, to the guy said that his brother should have checked the head of the gun, which I didn't really understand that, but now I understand that, to see if it was actually seeing if it was loaded or if it was ready to fire or not. So in other words, he's saying that Carrillo shot or was checking or was testing a gun that was loaded. It did not confirm it was unloaded before doing so.
Okay. But as I understand, Magruder told you he didn't see the shooting, did he?
Magruder changed his story, like I said, several times. No, he never said, he did not say that he saw it. He said he was in the room when it happened, but he didn't see who shot. But he's saying that's what the brothers were saying when they got in the car. But initially he said he wasn't there. And then it went to, I left before the gunshot. I did hear a gunshot, but I wasn't in there when that happened. I'd already left. To, yeah, I was in the room when the gunshot happened, but I didn't see the gunshot. To, we got in the car and Andrades is fussing at his brother about shooting the other guy.
Okay, well, let's go with the last version, which is he was there, but he didn't see who shot.
Correct.
So you're now assuming that because he ran out after the brothers left and got in the car, somehow or another, he knew who did the shooting then?
He ran out with the brothers, who one of them clearly had a firearm in his hands. And then he goes and gets in the car with these people, that it doesn't make sense. If I don't know you and you just shot somebody in front, I'm not going to go get in the car and go run off with you. Certainly if I'm not guilty of something, I wouldn't go get in a car and ran off with you. But I mean, if Rogers is really my friend, like I say, and I just witnessed him being shot, I'm going to stay with him and I'm going to call for him some help to get, I mean, that's me. But so it just, a lot of it doesn't make sense. However, he was still part of the plan, whatever was going on, whether it was a gun sale, whether it was drug sales, he was still part of that. And a person was killed during that. So that's the basis for a felony murder charge.
And you say that even though there were 2 other people in the room the entire time, and you haven't gotten a warrant for them because you need to speak to them?
Well, I need to ID them first. We did ID one.
Judge, one second, Judge. At this point, I'm going to object. Attorney Oden has, seems like he's asked the same question in different ways. Detective Moore has given the same answer. Whether or not some other people have been arrested or will be arrested, or if she will be issuing warrants for them, do not have any relevance regarding probable cause for his client, Mr. Magruder. And so I would ask that, well, I'm objecting on both grounds, not relevant, as well as ask and answer. And I would ask that Attorney Oden be ordered to move on.
I'm going to sustain the objection. It has been asked and answered. I mean, I guess by the officer testimony, Attorney Oden, is clear that others were in the room that you're trying to point to as possible suspects, so you can move on.
Okay, thank you. So as I understand, the critical factor in determining who was a suspect and who's not is who ran. Is that correct?
Well, that is certainly an indicator of guilt. However, I have not cleared anybody else, sir. There are 2 other individuals. One we have finally ID'd. The other one I have not ID'd. I do need to speak to them and try to develop any other avenues. I do need to, there's a lot of other things I'm still doing with the investigation as far as search warrants that I have not gotten any results back yet. So I'm still actively working the case. It's not that I'm just pointing the finger at 3 people and then that's that and wiping my hands. That's not how I do business, sir.
Okay, let me ask you this. How many gunshot wounds were found in the victim?
1.
I have nothing further.
Okay, ADA Freeman, do you have any redirect?
No, Your Honor, the state rests.
Okay. Attorney Jones, do you have any witnesses?
No witnesses, Your Honor.
Okay, Attorney Oden, do you have any witnesses for your client?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, look like we're ready for argument. ADA Freeman.
State waives opening.
Okay, Attorney Jones.
Your Honor, we ask that the murder charge be dismissed. There is no evidence on the fact that my client committed murder to the to the victim. In fact, what was testified and stated was 2 other individuals were also in the room. 2 other individuals were there after my client fled the room, and they left later on, and that the body was blocking the door, which means my client's fleeing, and it's as the detective stated, they left walking, not running, fleeing. If we're going to do assumptions, it could be assumption that my client is fleeing because he's fleeing for his life to get away from someone who could be shooting in there. The detective also stated that it was likely a 22 or 32, a revolver. That gun was not found on my client or anyone associated with my client. There was no bullets found with my client or anyone associated with my client, even though she stated that Mr. Carrillo, the other person with my client, possibly could have had a gun in his hand. And she also stated that Mr. Magruder said you should have checked the head. Mr. Andrea said you should have checked the head of the gun, see if it was loaded. That also mean we could have checked to see if you had bullets to shoot back if someone was shooting at you when you're buying drugs or something like that. We don't know what happened in that room, but we do know that even if we go by what the detective states, the gun that they had is not the gun that shot the victim. So none of my defendant or the other defendant can be even tied to the gunshot wound to the victim because it's not the gun that supposedly they had. You know, we'll stick on the fact that there was 2 other people left in the room that they talked to, one that they talked to, but just let them go through. And there was no testimony. I mean, here's the main thing. According to the detective, the body was blocking the door. According to the detective, 2 other people left the room after supposedly my client left. And if a body's blocking the door and 2 other people are leaving, since we're going to do assumptions, the assumption would be the 2 other people actually probably shot the guy that was actually in the room. And my client's fleeing from someone that is acting in that room. It also, with the detective statement, it doesn't make sense if I don't know you and you shot someone, as she was saying for Mr. Magruder, that I would run and jump in the car with you. She also stated it doesn't make sense that if Mr. Rogers was my friend and I just saw him got shot by these people, why I would leave with the shooter. What would make sense is they're fleeing from other people that are in the room that probably pulled out a gun and had a gun, and that's why they're fleeing for their lives to get out of the room. So we do ask that the murder charge be dismissed as there's nothing tying my client. The possession of the firearm, as the detective stated in the videos and everything they had, there was no firearm in my client's possession at any point in time. And the firearms themselves, there was nothing in there that says when they searched his house that he actually had a firearm. The only thing that they can find that was near him was actually bullets, and there's nothing against the law for him to have bullets that would be in the vehicle at the time, Your Honor. We do ask that, I do understand that the drugs were found in the home later on, pursuant to a search warrant of a murder charge that we think was improper. But we do ask that those other charges be dismissed. And if the judge does dismiss those other charges, we actually get a bond on the VGSA charges, as those are bondable offenses, and he's entitled to a bond if the other charges are dismissed. Thank you.
Okay, Attorney Oden.
Yeah, Your Honor, I ask that the murder charge be dismissed because of the fact that one of the natural reactions to anybody who hears a gunshot, particularly in a gunshot in a small area, is to flee. Mr. Magruder says, I did not see who shot, but he heard the shot and he ran. And the mere fact that he ran has now gotten him charged with murder, whereas the 2 people who didn't run, the last 2 people who left, who weren't in a hurry, who didn't call 911 for assistance for Mr. Rogers, well, she needs to talk to them in order to determine what their involvement was. Well, if that's the case, then certainly getting warrants for Mr. Magruder is premature for the murder because of the fact that we've got 5 people in a room. Actually, we have 6 people in a room, one of whom is shot. 5 people leave, and the detective's decision is to charge 3 with the murder, and she's got to make a determination as to whether or not she's going to charge the other 2, because she needs to talk to him. I asked the court to dismiss the charge of the murder against Mr. Magruder. Thank you.
88 Freeman.
Thank you, Judge. We're asking that all of the charges for both defendants are bound over to Superior Court. And let me just say this, Detective Moore has repeatedly said during her testimony that the investigation is still ongoing. And so there certainly may be other people that end up being charged for this, but based on the information that she has gathered regarding Mr. Andreas and Mr. Magruder, we believe that these charges are proper and there is probable cause. She testified that from looking at the video, that she was able to see the third party, Mr. Carrillo, the brother of Mr. Andreas, running when they ran out to the car. As she stated, they ran. They wanted to get out of there. From the video, and again, this is based on the experience and training of one of our detectives who's had numerous years of experience, looking at the video, the person who was in the room next door, you see her duck. And what Detective Moore says, it appears that it was probably when the gun fired. She didn't want to cooperate, but based on the other circumstances, that makes sense. That's when she ducked. And then you see Mr. Magruder, Mr. Andreas, and Mr. Carrillo running out. She testified when she interviewed Mr. Magruder, the statements that he gave regarding the firing of the gun. We also heard testimony, about the guns that were found. I mean, not the guns, I'm sorry, the drugs that were found in Mr. Andreas' residence. Judge, again, the investigation is still ongoing, but what we have now is we have whether it was a deal to buy marijuana or a deal to buy a gun. We have Mr. Magruder and Mr. Andreas in this hotel room. Mr. Magruder, I believe, brought Mr. Rogers, our decedent, up to the room. Whatever happens inside the room, Mr. Rogers was shot. And these individuals ran out of the room, got in the vehicle, and fled the scene. So we believe that the testimony is more than sufficient for probable cause, and we are asking that you bind all of these charges over to Superior Court.
Okay, thank you. In light of the evidence and the testimony presented by the detective, I do find sufficient probable cause to bind over all charges against defendant Amado Andreas, as well as defendant Mr. Michael D. Magruder. That will be the order of the court today, and that will conclude the preliminary hearing for both defendants. And I would like to thank both parties for their presentation of their case.
Thank you, Judge, and may Detective Moore be excused.
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes, ma'am.
Detective.
Yes, ma'am.
And Judge, you can give me a couple minutes. I'll get my paperwork ready so we can do the hearing on Manoa Smith, and that's with Attorney Evans.
Okay, and then Attorney Odom, that's your only case on the calendar for today?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Judge.